Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest with us, Ramesh sir, and he is the founder of BioBasics. So today we'll be having a conversation with him to know what he's doing and the impact that he's creating on the environment as a whole. Hi sir, how are you doing today?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting my request, sir. Without any further ado, let's get into the podcast. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience a bit about your background and what you're currently doing and where you based at also?
Sure. So my name is Ramesh Chandran, based out of Coimbatore for the past 10 years. I have spent about 22 plus years in the corporate world, working most part as a fund manager, managing uh, funds, money, and I've been a finance and strategy professional for like 22 years. And about 10 years ago, I came back. I was working in the US and Netherlands and other places. Came back to India uh, to start a social enterprise, and we've now called it, or rather, it's for the last 9 years. We uh, we've had this as BioBasics is the name of the social enterprise. We are into organic food. We spend a lot of time, energy, and money educating people, sharing our thoughts about food and the safety of food by introducing them to new grains, new types of food, keeping them away from chemicals and things that are toxic to our human bodies. So we are not only an organic food brand, but we are also the largest granary of organic heritage grains. So we offer about 60 varieties of rices, 10 varieties of wheats, and 10 millets, and so on, mainly with a view to communicate to our consumers that we don't have to eat the same rice day in and day out. That India is a treasure trove of thousands of varieties of rices and wheats and millets, and somehow because of the modern uh, things, the way we do things, we've reduced that to just a handful of grains. So there are more details into this I can talk about during the podcast, but that's my quick introduction. So we are a social enterprise. We are a private limited company, but the heart is in trying to promote safe food among consumers. It is to provide a decent remuneration for the organic farmers, and above all, take care of the environment. So
Got it.
that's a quick introduction.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very short and
Sure.
crisp introduction. Why did you start BioBasics? What was the pain point that you observed? And why exactly did you choose to work in the food sector and not any other issue that is any other issue that the world is currently facing?
Right. So it was very personal. The whole decision to step into this was very personal. 2005, when I was in the US, I had a health setback, and it was, I was right outside. Well, I just passed out of my business school, so just joined my new company, and I was working very happily. Something that all of us aspire for as youngsters. So this is like 20 years ago. Um, so that's when the health setback happened, and I was my wife Devi. She was with me at that time, and luckily I survived that. And then we started looking at what was wrong with our food, because I was a vegetarian. I had no bad habits to speak of. I was very careful about my health, but still this health setback happened. So then I knew intuitively that food has got a direct connection to health, right? So, and I was 36 at that time. Um, so at that point, I was like, well, we need to look at what food we're eating. We need to see uh, how it is made, know more about farm to table, what are the journeys that our food goes through from farm to table. So that is when we discovered a whole lot of new things. And Devi at that time, she was out. I mean, she had left her corporate job as well, and so she was exploring and working with farmers in the US, interestingly, and figuring out the food system because she noticed a lot of obesity among the American population, and food was extremely cheap, even cheaper than what it was in the India at that
Right.
time. So we were like, why is that happening? So she was digging into the whole food system herself, and I was from a farming and farmers perspective, and I started digging into it from a food and health perspective. So that's when we stepped into that, and together we decided to launch BioBasics in 2015, and here we are.
Awesome, awesome. I mean, it's always some sort of personal pain or
Yeah.
personal pain point that gives rise to ventures. Um, so, how does BioBasics work? So, you've been telling a lot about organic food, a lot about health. So, say if I'm a consumer, so I can order it from your website. But what is the background story of it? Do you connect farmers with consumers, or how is the process like?
Yeah, so we source from thousands of farmers spread across 13 states in India, and we collect close to 300 plus products, all that
Hmm.
a household needs for the house. So it ranges from fruits and vegetables to grains and pulses and oils and stuff like that. Everything that you need, spices, and we source it from genuine organic farmers whom we know,
Okay.
and then we package it and sell it in our brand as BioBasics
Hmm.
to customers which are across India, uh, mainly online, but there are offline pieces also. But we cover close to around 1900 pin codes last count. So in India, so you can think of not just the metros, but also even small towns where people are wanting to eat organic food, but they don't have easy access to it. So they come to BioBasics and order online, and we do deliver them there as well. So that's what we do. So basically, we are facilitating the sale, the marketing of organic produce. But here's the thing: see, if you look at farmers in organic farmers, we are one of the largest community of organic farmers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We have around 8 to 10 lakh of organic farmers in the country.
Okay.
But one of the things that they struggle with is marketing.
Right.
So they don't get the price for their organic produce,
Mm-hmm.
and they are forced to sell their organic produce in the regular market.
Right.
So, and that's a loss for them, and also there is a lack of, they're doing the environment, the society, the consumer a big favor by doing it organically without using chemicals, which is not easy. It requires a lot of effort, lot of knowledge and skill.
Mm-hmm.
So they do that, but we are not in a position to give them a market. So what happens is they go and dump it in their local markets for, a pittance.
Right.
So the idea for them and for us also is to kind of create a market among consumers for
Mm-hmm.
organic products so that they get a much better price, and so they can continue to be organic and serve the environment and the farmers and the consumers. So it is with that point of view that BioBasics has kind of become the marketing arm, if you like, right,
Hmm.
of organic farmers, because they cannot do farming and marketing at the same time,
Right.
because there's a lot of effort involved in marketing it, because there's a lot of awareness that needs to be generated. People need to be convinced about it,
Mm-hmm.
and it is still a very relatively new category in the food and beverage sector, because people are, only 1% of our Indian food and beverage industry is organic.
Hmm.
It's a huge learning curve for the consumers as well, and we are
Right.
here to educate and share our knowledge with them. So we do that online, through social media, and we talk offline as well. And this podcast is another example of how we reach out to our customers and general consumers, and to educate, to share what we think about organic food. So that's how the farmers get benefited, because they need a market,
Mm-hmm.
and we provide them that market.
Got it. Got it. So it's true that they need a market, but how does a farmer know that there is something called biobasics that exists and that they can partner with you and sell their produce?
So for the past almost 20 years, since Devi was an Infoscian earlier, so she was working with Infosys earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and when she quit Infosys, she went into this whole area of sustainable food and sustainable farming.
Right.
And when she started working with NGOs, non-profits in the US and then in India, so there's a whole movement of organic farmers in India.
Hmm.
There are about 250 NGOs in India who are
Okay.
today associated with organic farming,
Okay.
who are promoting organic farming in the country. So it's a full fledged network of farmers, activists, of thinkers, farmer gurus,
Hmm.
agri scientists, and so on. So,
Hmm.
collective of people who believe that organic food and organic farming is the way of the future.
Hmm.
That we have to take care of the soil, air, and water, and human health,
Right.
to be able to everything is linked. So it's that kind of a community which believes in it, and these are people who have been into organic farming in the 80s and 90s, when we had not even heard of organic farming.
Hmm.
So even before it became a consumer fad, if you like.
Right.
But it is, they have been committed to it for
Hmm.
so many decades. I mean, at least for 2 to 3 decades.
Hmm.
So we have these farmers, and they're part of this network. So to answer your question, how do they know that we are here?
Hmm.
They know there are many retailers like us, brands like us, who are trying to help them sell their products.
Hmm.
So Devi being part of that network, and she's actually worked in that space at a fairly senior level, working with policy making and other areas as well. So she's kind of plugged into that, and that's one of our strengths, is that we actually know which farmer is organic, and
Hmm.
the motivation behind the farm. Okay, there are farmers today possibly who got into organic farming because they see that, oh, that's the prices are good and I'll get into organic farming from a purely commercial point of view. But we are talking about farmers who, regardless of the commerce and regardless of the market, they have been practicing organic
Hmm.
farming for the past 2 3 decades. So these are people we can trust. These are
Hmm.
people who are actually inspiration for biobasics. And these are people on whose shoulders we stand
Right.
to help promote this whole concept of safe food and sustainable agriculture. So to answer your question, uh, we don't they don't need to find us; they know us.
Hmm.
We need to find who is the right person in the right place, growing the right product.
Hmm.
So the community is pretty strong. The network is strong. So it's not an issue for them to find us.
Right. Got it. And a very basic question. So what is the difference between organic farming and then the actual farming that takes place right now?
So today, 98% of farming that's happening in the country is uses chemicals in some form or the other.
Hmm.
So right from when you sow the seed in the soil, the soil is treated with fungicides. It's
Hmm.
a kind of chemical. Then when you sow the seeds are treated with chemicals. Then once the plant starts growing, whatever be the plant, plant starts growing, then you are exposed to pests. So they use pesticides
Hmm.
to improve growth, and to kind of have much better yields. They would use chemical fertilizers like DAP and other things.
Right.
Um, so there are, and then once it is harvested, to be stored. There's a lot of, again, a lot of chemicals used to keep away the rodents and other uh, you know pests. So all the way from preparing the soil to sowing to growing to harvesting to storing and even transporting, chemicals are used.
Hmm.
And all these chemicals are part of the final product of whether it is a rice or dal or whatever you eat. It's part of, and that goes into our bodies. So the difference between organic farming and other farming is that organic farming doesn't use any chemicals at all.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
this is how man has been farming for centuries
Hmm.
until 1960s.
Hmm.
Until 1960s, we never used chemicals in farming.
Okay.
Then came along Green Revolution,
Hmm.
which all of you must have heard of, where we
Yes.
were forced to use chemicals to promote a much better, higher yielding varieties of rice and other products.
Hmm.
So chemicals then started entering farming. Until then, there were no chemicals in farming.
Hmm.
And once the chemicals entered the farming, then the chemicals started being used for various products, various things, for pesticides, for fungicides, herbicides. Now, weeding, for example, when a plant grows, there are other weeds that come along with it, and those weeds take away the nutrients from the soil and not give it to the plant that we are wanting. So you think
Hmm.
about a tomato plant. You have a tomato plant, the tomatoes will grow on this plant, but while the tomato plant is growing, you will have other small plants growing around it, which are called weeds. They are plants, but we call them weeds. So weedicides were developed, chemicals were developed to kill those weeds so that the tomato plant can survive. So in
Hmm.
every which way, we have been using chemicals in very creative, ingenious ways to increase production, and production has increased, no doubt. But today, uh, the increase in chemicals is harming the consumers for sure. It's harming the farmers as well because they are finding that they are exposed to so many chemicals. They are harming the animals who are, the livestock that they have,
Hmm.
and above all, they are harming the soil, which is losing its fertility because of excessive use of chemicals year after year,
Hmm.
and it is polluting the air and the water. So
Hmm.
all these chemicals are getting down into the groundwater.
Hmm.
So when somebody is putting a bore well and digging out some water to even drink,
Yeah.
is laden with chemicals. And that is one of the reasons why some of our soda manufacturers, as Pepsi or Coke, they were complaining about how in their water that they use, they have chemicals.
Hmm.
Not that they are adding chemicals themselves, but the water
Okay.
that they use has chemicals.
Hmm.
So that mother's milk today
Hmm.
has chemicals,
Right.
has the same pesticides that the farmers use in their field,
Hmm.
is being found in mother's milk,
Hmm.
which is what we are feeding our children.
Right.
So it is it's an all pervasive thing which has happened with chemicals getting into agriculture, and that is a problem. So
Hmm.
whenever we talk of organic agriculture, is how nature intended in some ways, right? So nature intended that okay, plants will grow based on fertility of the soil and the water or air that you have, and you will produce a certain type of product, certain type of fruit or vegetable, and that will be what humans or animals will consume. That's the
Hmm.
organic way of looking at it. When you step away from that and use chemicals to drive all that, that is chemical agriculture. So there's a difference between the organic and
Right.
chemical agriculture.
Right. Got it. So when you shifted your lifestyle, I'm not sure if it's completely or partially, but when you shifted your lifestyle to having organic foods and living in a sustainable way, how has it impacted your personal life and also probably your surroundings and the general lifestyle that you've been leading?
Okay. So after the health episode I had 20
Hmm.
years ago, we went organic overnight.
Okay.
So we completely shifted to organic because we were
Hmm.
convinced about its impact on health.
Right.
And that's what happens when you get into an emergency room and all that. People start thinking about life itself.
Yes.
So uh, so we went organic overnight, and we have been for the past 20 years. We have been organic. uh, we've been eating organic food largely. I
Hmm.
mean, we do eat out, have an ice cream here or there and all that, which of course is not organic, so that's okay. But largely 95% or even 90%
Hmm.
we are eating. The meals we eat at home are all organic. And when I say all organic, it's not just rice and dal or whatever,
Hmm.
but vegetables, the fruits. And now it's the mango season.
Right.
Mangoes are the one of the most chemicalized fruits that you can get,
Hmm.
and you can make it out. And some of these things you can make out very very quick, very easily through your taste buds.
Okay.
You can taste chemicals in mangoes today. You can feel the flatness. The flavor is not there.
Hmm.
It is like pap. It's literally pap if you eat a chemical mango.
Hmm.
Whereas if you eat an organic mango, you can just, as a riot of colors and riot of tastes and flavors.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's a fantastic difference. You can make out these things when you have things like mangoes. Mangoes being one of them, bananas are another. You can
Hmm.
actually make out the difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so how has it impacted me? I am on top of the world right now. Very happy that I have chosen the organic way of life. With or without biobasics, I would have eaten organic food anyway. And I keep saying, I don't have anything better to do. I eat organic. Happy to run a company which is into organic food, and sharing that organic food with hundreds and thousands of other consumers.
Hmm.
And couldn't be better. So I'm not complaining at all. Really happy. And more importantly, it's the farmers who are really benefiting from this whole effort,
Hmm.
and of course the environment.
Right. Right. So, talking about the fruits, vegetables, and different greens, what can you give, say, top three or top five of your most impactful products that you sell, or which are really good for health and also the environment? Or we can categorize into two different things: best for the
Yeah.
environment,
No,
best for health.
so whatever we sell is good for the environment, and whatever we sell is good for the health, and that's the beauty of it, right? So in nature, all these things are connected. So what is good for the soil, what is good for the water in the soil, is good for the plants, it's good for the animals, it's good for human beings. So it's all linked. It cannot be compartmentalized, right?
Right.
So it's only humans who compartmentalize these things today.
Hmm.
And that's the whole idea of organic, right? That everything
Yes.
is together, it's linked to each other. So the plants, you have the pests, which are natural pests. The pests have their pests, in the sense there are, like we call it, vegetarian pests and non-vegetarian pests. The
Mm-hmm.
pests who eat other pests. So this whole ecosystem is very beautifully created in nature, and we have wrecked it up by just adding chemicals to one part of it, just because we want higher productivity, higher yield in certain crops. And that's not how nature works.
Right.
So to answer your question, the top three or five
Hmm.
what best selling products are: one, it's these are different rices. We are a granary of rices.
Hmm.
So we have three to five very very popular rices. Now we call it, one of the rices is called the Kerala Matta rice. It's also called the Kerala rice, which is a red color rice,
Right.
one of our more popular rices. And there are, that's one part of rice. The other is, there are so many. I mean, if you let me, I'll just keep talking about rices and uh, all the products for the rest 2 hours. But the other kind of rice is the fragrant rice, or the scented rice,
Hmm.
which we use for special occasions. You would have heard of basmati,
Yes.
but basmati is one of the it's just one of the many fragrant rices that India has. And
Okay.
basmati is not from the south.
Okay.
Okay, so we have something called Gandagasale, Jeeragasale.
Hmm.
These are some rices from Kerala and Tamil Nadu, which are equally, if not better,
Hmm.
tasting and better smelling rices. When you cook it, the whole
Okay.
kitchen and the house will start. There's an aroma to it.
Hmm.
So those rices are the second. I would say that that's one of the more interesting offerings that we have. We also have what we call raw cane sugar, which is also called jaggery powder.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is again very interesting because you can replace white sugar with this. So we
Right.
all know that white sugar is not particularly healthy. It is again a lot of chemicals. It's a refined sugar, not doesn't have any minerals or things which can actually help your body. Whereas raw cane sugar is a more unprocessed version of sugar.
Hmm.
So it carries iron. It has much more of other minerals which can help the body, our human body. So rock and sugar is the third. The fourth, I would say, are the cold pressed oils.
Okay.
So typically, the oils that you get in the market are refined oils.
Mm-hmm.
So you take out most of the nutrients from it. You go through a lot of high level of heat to create that oil, and then you bleach it, you deodorize it. Use a lot of things that you do to get that cold press, to get that oil. It's a refined oil.
Right.
But what we sell is the cold pressed oil, which is not using heat. It's pure oil. It's not blended with other oils, and it's you have coconut oil, you have groundnut oil. So those kinds of oils are again another set of very good, very popular products. People love it. They keep coming back for more in terms of buying more and more oil. So those are some of the rices and some of the products we have. But like I said, I can keep talking about it for hours.
Got it.
I'll stop there.
I have a very dumb question. So, the oils that you've mentioned, is it for cooking purpose or can people apply to their hair also?
So, good question. The whole concept of oil not being good for head or your hair or your skin or your food, it's again a later day thing. Remember, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, people were using the same oil for the same things, all things.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you would cook in it and you would also use it on your body. It's medicinal in some cases. It can actually solve many of your small ailments.
Hmm.
So the oil that we use and we recommend other people to use, unless it's with, you use some herbs in it, it cannot. Then you cannot use it for cooking. But in its purest form, coconut or groundnut or sesame oil
Hmm.
are can be used on your body and in your food.
Right.
And I do it on a daily basis. So it's something that is so there again when you look at it from a uh, personal care perspective or cosmetics perspective, the shampoo you use or the face washes
Hmm.
that you
Hmm.
use or the soaps you use, um, if you're using different types, and some of these personal care items are again infused with chemicals,
Yes.
and people think their skins are like plastic that you can apply anything on it and it'll be fine. The
Hmm.
skin is the largest organ in the human body
Yeah.
and it absorbs everything.
Hmm.
So if you apply chemicals on top of your skin, onto your hair, obviously the body is going to absorb that. So ideally, we recommend, and I personally follow it. People I know who are committed to it follow it. We use the same oil for for our bodies, for our hair, and also for cooking. So yeah, so it's not a dumb question. It's a very very good question.
All right, all right. And when you spoke about the rice that smells, I was thinking I never smelled rice. I mean, there was like I can smell probably the heat that was coming from the normal rice that my mom cooks, but I've never really knew that there is some sort of different rice types that actually smell when you cook.
So these are called aromatic rices,
Hmm.
and we carry ourselves around 10 of them, if not more.
Okay.
So there are things like a very interesting rice is called Govinda Bhog,
Okay.
comes from West Bengal.
Hmm.
And as the name suggests, it is the food of Govinda. or Krishna.
Hmm.
So it is amazing. It is just amazing. You can make, if you make awal or poha out of it, the beaten rice as you call it. Amazing. You can make amazing upma from it. Beautiful. Similarly, in Wayanad, you have, in Kerala, you have some beautiful rices.
Right.
Ullankarma is another rice. So there are so many varieties of fragrant rices, and it's amazing how much heritage we have. Imagine in the US or UK or wherever,
Hmm.
they don't have this.
Yeah.
They, because they are not. First of all, they are not rice growing regions.
Hmm.
Secondly, even if you look at wheat, they may have had these wheat varieties long back, but now they don't. They eat the same wheat day in and day out.
Yeah.
So you make the pasta out of it, the noodles out of it, the
Hmm.
spaghetti or your bread out of it. Everything is made from the same wheat.
Hmm.
Whereas here we have 10 varieties of wheat
Hmm.
that we carry.
Right.
So imagine, so there are, and each variety has a different micronutrient profile.
Hmm.
In the sense they have different combinations of, magnesium and zinc and, calcium or whatever, those kinds of things. So the more diversity you have, you eat, you get your what your body needs from different grains. So it's not the same grain that you're eating every day.
Right.
So today what we are doing is we're eating different types of foods but made from the same ingredient. That's ridiculous.
Hmm.
Whereas what is ideal is, if you eat the same kind of food day in and day out, it's fine. But if it's made from different ingredients, it's amazing. So even when it comes to rices, there are rices which are good for porridge. There are rices which are good for biryani and, special occasions. Very soft. Right now it's summer. People are just, there's so much of heat in the country. This
Yes.
is not the time to eat red rice.
Hmm.
So this is a good time to eat some of the white varieties of rices, which is again fragrant rices.
Hmm.
Beautiful variety, light on a stomach, very nice. But during the other times, red rices are good for again for various minerals. So there is, as we say, there is a rice for every season. There is a rice for every occasion. There's a rice for every health condition. Um, there is a rice for every cuisine. There are certain rices that go beautifully. In Kerala we have the putta and
Hmm.
idiyappam and all that.
Hmm.
They make fantastic with that. Then there are rices which will make fantastic table rice, just the regular rice that we eat.
Hmm.
So that variety of rices, the diversity, is something that we are missing out on.
Right.
And like I said, that's why I'm on top of the world. I'm using it, sharing it with our consumers. So I think there's so much of heritage in our food
Hmm.
which we are losing out,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we are looking at, entertaining ourselves, eating out, and all that we can do, but the reality is that we are eating the same ingredient.
Right.
So I keep asking, well, you are not in jail,
Hmm.
so why are you eating the same rice day in and day out?
Hmm.
You're a free man or a free woman.
Right.
Why are we not eating the rices that we should be eating?
Hmm. I think you should write a book. It's very interesting about the insights that you have and the knowledge you possess. So you should.
I I intend to do that.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Okay, then I'll definitely read it.
No, because this is a fascinating journey for me.
Yes.
I was not into food.
Hmm.
I like any of us in school, college, we just wanted to get into a nice, employment, nice company, do well, climb the ladder or
Hmm.
the career and all that. But then when something happens and you start reflecting on what you are eating, what you're doing, and it's so fascinating.
Hmm.
So I'm very passionate about this. I was never a foodie. I'm still not a foodie.
Okay.
But I just can I'm amazed at what we have,
Hmm.
and I don't know why people won't eat it.
Right.
So because of policies of the government, or because of our history of, being controlled by the British for so long.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
so many historical reasons to it, but the reality is that we have that treasure,
Right. Right.
and it is our heritage. So
Yes. So, do you think there is a mindset shift happening within the
So,
consumers to move to organic food? Or if
absolutely,
yes, what's your perspective on it? And if no, why do you think
absolutely.
they don't want to shift to organic foods?
No, I think they are shifting.
Mm-hmm.
It might be much smaller than the mainstream
Right.
at this point, because the organic food industry is just about 1% of the whole food and beverage industry,
Mm-hmm.
but it's growing very fast. It's growing. They are saying it's doubling every 2 years. Yeah, every
Right.
2 years is doubling. So it's about 36% growth is what the industry is seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So many more people are realizing that a lot of their health problems are because of the chemicals in food. So that's primary reason why people shift to organic food. Then they hear about the kind of adulteration chemicals that are going on, that are being put in their regular food,
Hmm.
and that is kind of very putting off. And not just for your uh, your regular rice dal and all that, but even when it comes to animal products like
Hmm.
dairy and meat and fish, the amount of chemicals used there is just so bad. I mean, so it's really bad.
Yeah.
So I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan, so I don't have any of those. But the
Hmm.
reality is that those are even worse for
Hmm.
the human body.
Hmm.
And the sad thing is, Meghna, you don't really come to know, like I went through, right?
Hmm.
You don't come to know what hits you at what point of time.
Right.
And if you ignore your early signs,
Hmm.
then you're letting that toxicity build up in your body, which will later create much bigger problems which you can't reverse.
Hmm.
And the sad part is when you get to a point, unfortunately, or unfortunately, somebody gets to that point where you cannot reverse.
Hmm.
Then what do? They go to the healthcare industry, which is feeding them even more chemicals.
Right.
So in terms of whether it is a chemotherapy or whether it is medications, these are all
Hmm.
different types of chemicals.
Hmm.
So, like I jokingly say, when you walk today in any big city, you walk. Uh, you first of all, you don't get space to walk. But even if you walk, on one side you see a series of bakeries,
Hmm.
and the other side you see a series of medical shops.
Hmm. Right.
So, as someone said, one of the doctors I had, one of my doctor friends, he said, first 20 years you eat at the bakeries,
Hmm.
and the next 20 years you eat at the medical shops.
Right.
They're all chemicals. It's all chemicals.
Hmm.
So today, if you can imagine, anything that you eat today, if
Hmm.
it is not marked organic, or if you don't know it's organic for sure, then you are
Hmm.
eating something with chemicals. Think
Right.
about it. The tea, start your if you start your day with a
Hmm.
tea, your sugar, your milk,
Hmm.
all those again contains chemicals. So day after day, you are consuming this, and nature, our own human body, is so forgiving that it will put up with it
Hmm.
till it doesn't. Till a point where it says enough is enough, and well, you have diabetes, you have cancer, you have um, your heart disease or whatever, and all these diseases are now directly being linked to chemicals in our food. So, and it's not me who is saying it; it's a scientific literature
Right.
saying that this is what's happening.
Hmm.
So clearly, cancer is linked. Some of the now latest was the diabetes being part of it. That
Hmm.
diabetes, people, used to be a rich man's disease.
Hmm.
Diabetes was, but today you are seeing farmers
Hmm.
in villages
Right.
having diabetes. They work hard.
Hmm.
There's no reason why they are not rich, so they are not like eating a lot of sugar or whatever. Why are they having diabetes?
Hmm.
Mainly because the food that they're eating is laden with chemicals, and their bodies are exposed to chemicals. Most of these chemicals are what are called endocrine disruptors.
Hmm.
They're called EDCs,
Okay.
endocrine disrupting chemicals. You can look it up.
Hmm.
Our endocrine system actually controls all the hormonal, metabolic functioning of the body. That
Hmm.
how much insulin has to be produced, how much this has, all that is managed by the endocrine system.
Hmm.
And these chemicals damage the endocrine system over a period of time. So when that happens, the body cannot function in a normal way. Then people put on weight.
Hmm.
So that's another thing which is there. Obesity is now directly linked to chemicals in food,
Hmm.
particularly for women.
Right.
So women are more exposed and more vulnerable. Children are even more vulnerable.
Hmm.
So think about the whole food system. Today, an average middle class family buys food, four of them eating food which is mostly chemical laden.
Hmm.
So why wouldn't we have a disease epidemic in the country? We are the diabetes capital of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we explain that?
Hmm.
So that's the story.
Right.
I don't know what your question was, but yeah, I get it.
No, no, it answered a lot of things. Well, my next question was regarding you mentioned you're a vegan, and then we've talked a bit about the dairy products as well. So, you think so? A lot of people do not really find substitutes for dairy products. They keep saying that, oh, if you don't drink milk, you'll be low on calcium. So, what do you think one should consume as a substitute for dairy products, or do you even think dairy is necessary for uh, our life?
So three things you can consume, or you can replace dairy like that.
Hmm.
One is ragi, which is finger millet, also called ragi. It's
Right.
one of the millets. Has more calcium than, definitely more than milk, much more. It's called the richest source of calcium.
Hmm.
Number two is adding sesame to your. Sesame is a high
Right.
uh, amount of calcium. And third, there are your regular spinach, palak,
Hmm.
has enough of calcium.
Okay.
So if you add, I'm not a vegan activist, but if you listen to any vegan activist, he would
Hmm.
tell you that milk is not your natural food. We are the only species which drinks another species' milk.
Yes, I've heard
You know,
this. Hmm.
we have also one of the few. Well, we are the only species which drinks milk even into adulthood.
Hmm.
Most animals, they stop,
Yeah.
having milk with the first one or two, depending on how big or small the mammal is, but it will stop.
Hmm.
But we keep drinking milk
Hmm.
all through our lives, right? So it's not necessary, it's not a natural food. There was a time when we were agriculturists. Food was not so easily available,
Hmm.
so we would have these livestock which will supplement our food,
Hmm.
right? So a cow would be there, and we could use the milk when there is no nothing else, or maybe if it's excess, you can have it. But if you go back 100 years, 200 years, milk and all the meat products were a luxury.
Hmm.
They were not being eaten daily. Today, everybody is eating dairy products and meat products on a daily basis, every meal.
Hmm. Right.
So this is the problem of the rich man, right? So we so much of animal products being brought into our diet is only a recent phenomenon.
Hmm.
Now there are people who say that India is not entirely vegetarian. That is true.
Hmm.
70% of India eats meat and
Hmm.
dairy, no doubt. But earlier, 100 years ago, the frequency of eating meat was so low. I remember as a child, we used to eat meat at home, but it would be only on Sundays
Hmm.
for lunch. That's it.
Right.
So we would never have anything else, anytime else. Of course, milk and eggs were more common, but if you go back even another 100 years, milk and eggs were not very common.
Hmm.
It was difficult to get. It was costly. It was not something the poor ate. Of course, they were malnourished at that time. But the fact is that today, when you have so much of food, you don't really need animal products to sustain it.
Hmm.
And today, what is the way the milk is produced is not the way our Lord Krishna used to have milk.
Hmm.
Our cows today, 99% of the cows in the country today are artificially inseminated.
Yes.
They are not allowed even a single year of not having of not being pregnant.
Hmm.
So the lifespan of the cow went down from a good 20, 25 years to now 12 or 13 years,
Hmm.
because every year she is made to reproduce,
Hmm.
because it's in the interest of the farmer, interest of the consumer. We are literally milking the cow,
Yeah.
literally milking the cow.
Hmm.
So she doesn't have milk when, if it's not artificial, if she's not pregnant, like any mammal would not produce milk.
Hmm.
But we, because we want milk, we impregnate her, and then we get the milk out of her every year. So obviously it affects the lifespan. It's
Right.
cruel to the animal, and at the same time, what is the kind of milk you're getting?
Hmm.
It's
Right.
not the milk that Lord Krishna had.
Yes. Do you drink coffee and tea every day? Do you have the habit of drinking coffee, tea? No.
No,
Okay. Okay.
I've given up 15 years now. I don't have tea or coffee.
Okay. Got it.
Big saving, big saving.
Okay. Yes. I see a lot of people addicted to coffee, especially in my college. People need coffee to, I don't know, it's just if you're caffeinated, then you keep studying. There's that notion. So I was thinking, and also there are alternative milks, right? Like almond milk, coconut milk. So do you think they are organic, or you think we shouldn't really
No,
drink
you have to
those?
check whether they are organic, because you have to
Okay.
ask whether the almonds or the peanuts or the coconut or soy that you have, all these options are available.
Hmm.
Whether those nuts and seeds, whether those are organically grown or not.
Hmm.
So you'll have to check whether, when you have, they're not naturally organic, in the sense that if you're growing almonds and coconut and all organically, yes, sure, their milk is organic.
Hmm. Hmm.
But otherwise, that is number one. Number two is, I keep asking, okay, look, why are we so wedded to milk? I mean, if we can give up smoking, many of us can give up alcohol.
Hmm.
Why can't you give up milk? Milk is not even addictive.
Right.
So why? So okay, coffee is addicting,
Hmm.
right? So coffee is addictive, but the problem with coffee and tea is that they are stimulants. Yes, you're right. When you're younger, you have to study for, you want to keep awake, so you pump yourself with tea and coffee. But it does take a toll. It's okay to do it for a while.
Hmm.
So you want to get through some exam, you want to work. I think it's fine. But come back to the natural state. See, again, tea and coffee is again not a natural drink for Indians.
Hmm.
See, in our olden times, let's say 300 years ago, we didn't have, but the British brought in tea for us.
Hmm.
We didn't have tea in this country. The British brought it from China or wherever,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
then started growing here. There's a whole trade that whole went on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The British introduced us to tea. We
Hmm.
were not drinking tea.
Hmm.
And maybe in some locations where coffee grew, some of these
Hmm.
places where
Hmm.
coffee plantations, maybe they were having some, but most people were not. So what were Indians drinking without, if it not tea or coffee?
Hmm.
They were having lime juice, they were having tender coconut,
Hmm.
they were having buttermilk,
Hmm.
they were having, the kanji, as we call it,
Yeah.
uh, the, the water of the rice water, if
Rice.
you like,
Hmm. Hmm.
or fermented rice, fermented, kept overnight. That's what people
Hmm.
drank at that time.
Hmm.
So we got onto tea and coffee, and now we want all tea and coffee. So
Hmm.
people would need to know the history of our food and who we are, because our genetics, our genomes have not changed in 200 years or whatever.
Hmm.
It takes a much longer time,
Hmm.
but we are not. This is not about food. So it's
Right.
always better to keep away from it.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
can do it for a while, you can cheat a while, but I do drink coffee. I must admit, if I have a long drive to do.
Okay. Hmm.
So if I'm driving for 10 hours just to keep awake,
Hmm.
I'll have a cup of tea.
Right. Right.
But that's more tactical. It's not.
Hmm.
I'm not addicted.
Right. Right. So going back to the grains and food production, I was curious about food wastage. So while you transport it to the consumers or during the production process, is there a lot of food wastage or grain wastage? And if yes, then how do you deal with it?
Most of the food wastage. In a very tight supply chain, food wastage is very minimal.
Hmm.
When that supply chain is very tight, and in our case, in BioBasics case, that supply chain is very tight, in the sense that we pick it up from the farmers, comes to our warehouses,
Hmm.
which we have in Coimbatore, and we package it, we clean it, package it, and we it's delivered to the doorstep of consumers across, like I said, 1900 pin codes.
Hmm.
So the supply chain is so short that there is no, at least when it comes to grains, there's not much wastage.
Hmm.
Wastage is very less. But what happens is, in the regular mainstream supply chain, rice is grown from so many places. It's collected at one point, then it is stored there for some time. Then after some time, it goes to a bigger mandi, a bigger market, and there it stays for some more time. And then it comes back to the same place where it started, into the retail stores, goes to the wholesaler, the retailer, and finally so there are like at least 7 or 8 players in between the farmer and the consumer.
Hmm.
And each point you will need to store these grains. And when you store these grains, obviously rodents will attack. There'll be other pests which will attack. So you use chemicals to keep them rodent free.
Hmm.
So that's one side. But still, when it comes to FCI, which is our Food Corporation of India, and they collect a lot of rice and wheat and all that, uh, tremendous amount of wastage happens because of rodent attacks,
Hmm.
because they can't control it.
Hmm.
So when the supply chains are shorter, you will have much lower wastage, and that's exactly how our ancestors used to eat. You
Hmm.
eat only local stuff.
Hmm.
So if you are in Tamil Nadu right now, if I'm in Coimbatore, you will eat what is grown within say 100 200 kilometers.
Hmm.
You will know the farmer who produces it, maybe from the same village.
Hmm.
So when it comes to fresh produce, you will have wastage because they are perishable.
Right.
But even if you are producing it locally
Hmm.
and, and consuming it locally, the wastage is very less.
Hmm.
So when it comes to food systems, and particularly when it comes to wastage, it
Hmm.
has to be a decentralized uh, procurement, decentralized system. It cannot, today it is highly centralized.
Hmm.
So you would find vegetables, for example, uh, grown in and around Chennai, you know, traveling all the way, or rather, let's take from here, Coimbatore, traveling all the way to Coimbatore, which is one of the biggest markets in Chennai
Hmm.
for vegetables and fruits. It's a massive thing, and where people are bargaining, they are, bidding. There's auctions going on for tomatoes or whatever. So the tomato actually grown in Coimbatore transports itself, is transported to Chennai, Coimbatore market. Then all the selling happens, and it might actually come back to Coimbatore to be eaten by people like us. So imagine the amount of food miles involved, the
Hmm.
amount of fossil fuels that you're using to transport food. Huge. Number one, that's environment impact. Number one, I mean negative impact one.
Hmm.
The other impact is that these will get damaged in the process, and therefore you will have chemicals to reduce the wastage, and in spite of that you will have higher wastage.
Hmm.
So ideal to have decentralized. So to answer your question, yes, there is wastage, not so much in our case, when there is an organic small uh, supply chain, but in the regular thing, yes, regular market, mainstream market, there is quite a bit of wastage.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, got it. So, very quick questions. I mean, these can be elaborated in depth as well. But two questions. One was, how do you educate your consumers to transition to organic foods? Number two is, what were the initial challenges that you faced or challenges that you're still facing while growing biobasics?
yeah. I think the answer to both the questions is the same.
Hmm.
It is the consumer is the problem in the
Okay.
entire chain, from farmers to wholesalers to traders to retailers to consumers. If you look at that entire chain,
Mm-hmm.
uh, everybody is ready to go organic.
Hmm.
The consumer is hesitating to go organic, right? I
Hmm.
mean, there are quite a few folks who are going organic, but there are it's not good enough, it's not fast enough.
Hmm.
So the consumer is the problem, but guess what? Consumer is also the solution,
Right.
because if the consumer changes its mind, and this has happened in US, it's happened in Europe as well. The consumer changes her mind, says that I will not eat food laden with chemicals. The retailer will not stock it.
Hmm.
The wholesaler will stop buying and selling it. The farmers will start producing food without chemicals.
Hmm.
So it's very critical for the consumers, people like you and me, to go organic, because we have the power to change the entire food system.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's one part. So as they say, it's not possible to push a rope; you can only pull a rope.
Hmm.
So same way, no
Yes.
matter what the farmer does, the farmer may grow organic food, the retailer, but if the consumer does not want to eat it, or is not aware enough or appreciative enough to eat organic food, and that too, multiple grains and all that, these things will die out. Organic farmers will get wiped out. Your other heritage grains will get wiped out.
Hmm.
So what we recommend, what we spend all our time is on the consumers, to talk to the consumers, and that brings me to the first question you had as to how do we reach out to the consumers? Through any which way possible. So
Hmm.
we start with social media. We do podcasts like this, or we write a lot on a blog, on our website. We do interviews. We meet them offline. We talk to them, over phone. We try and reach out to as many people as possible.
Hmm.
But mainly, I would say it's social media at this point, because we can't afford other kinds of media.
Hmm.
So social media is very helpful. So we do that. So Insta, Facebook, YouTube, we try and reach out to all.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. So, my final question for today's podcast is, what advice would you give to the audience that are watching this podcast and to people as a whole? So, the audience of this podcast are usually teenagers and people in their early 20s. So, to them and also to other people.
Two words: go
To,
organic.
sorry?
Go organic.
Okay.
Avoid chemicals, and especially for younger uh, adults, teenagers, or young adults, I think it's absolutely essential. Um, I, in some ways, I would apologize um, to all teenagers. I will apologize to young adults that our generation, now I'm 55, so my generation has really messed up things for you guys. It's unfortunate. You guys don't have, um, I mean, chemicals have gone into every bit of your life, ranging from food to personal care to home care, use of dishwashing liquids, your what you put into your washing machine, everything, including processed foods. Everything that comes in paper, plastic, glass is laden with chemicals unless it is organic. So unfortunately, we have polluted the entire system, food system, including the perfumes that people use.
Hmm.
These are chemicals. They are called aerosols.
Hmm.
They are harmful in many ways. We were not used to perfumes when we were children,
Yeah.
but you guys, I mean, younger people are used to perfumes. So you are breathing it in every day on a
Hmm.
daily basis, right?
Hmm.
So I would say, be two words, like I said, go organic. And when I say go organic, I don't mean just in food, but in everything you do. Keep close to nature. Be as close as possible to nature, because that's what is going. That's who we are. We are part of nature. But the moment we step out of nature, well, nature has a very strange way of coming back at us.
Yeah.
So it's always best to stay in line with nature, be close to nature. That's what I would suggest.
Hmm. Very impactful closing to today's podcast. But thank you so much, sir, for coming here. I
Sure.
absolutely enjoyed the entire conversation. Learned so much in just 1 hour, and hopefully, sometime I'll meet you again offline. and then you can tell me more about different foods and a lot of things about organic foods.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, and I congratulate you for doing this podcast for young adults and teenagers. It's really nice, and thanks for having me and having the patience to listen to me. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye
Ciao.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.